Hey guys, welcome to the world of Josh Adams. My name is Josh, and if you're new here to my channel, welcome. I'm on a mission to overcome my own personal challenges, which for me includes food addiction, and then I hope to be able to live out my bucket list in hopes that it can inspire you to be able to overcome your own personal challenges and live out your dreams as well. So today I thought it would be fun to kind of tell you guys my full story because, I've had a lot of people who are new to my channel and I've shared bits and pieces of my story before, but spread out over multiple videos. So I thought it would be good to just share my story all in one video for anyone who's new and wants to get to know me. So let's get started. You'll have to forgive me because I am walking and I do get out of breath, so bear with me. So I was born in Michigan, Grand Rapids to be specific, back in the year of our Lord, 1985. By all accounts, I was a normal, healthy child. Perhaps spoiled a little, but happy nonetheless. My dad worked for General Motors, and my mom was mostly a stay-at-home mom who worked part-time as a nurse. It wasn't long before I had two younger brothers. Yes, I'm the oldest of three boys. My poor mother. For the most part, my childhood was good. In a lot of ways, my upbringing was similar to most middle-class Midwestern families. My mom was a stay-at-home mom when I was growing up, but she was a nurse and she would work overnights. And then to supplement our income, she ran a cake decorating business from the house. So it was kind of cool, when I was a kid, my mom would let me just go downstairs into the basement and pick out a cake pan of my choosing. And then I would basically get to decorate my own cake. And I loved it, But it also had a downside to it. And that is that very early on, I exhibited behaviors of sneaking food. Part of the cake decorating process is after you bake a cake, you trim off the top part of it, the part that raises, to make it level for frosting. So we would have all these extra pieces of cake that had been trimmed off, and I can remember sneaking that when I was as young as probably 5 or 6. I was born a normal weight, but I started gaining weight very early on, and all through school I was made fun of for being the overweight kid. My family had its share of problems, like I think any family does. My parents decided to move to upstate New York when I was in between my 5th grade and 6th grade year. When we moved to upstate New York, I was already 200 pounds. My family was concerned and suggested that I participate in a school sport. And so for some reason, I chose wrestling. It was a terrible life decision. And I learned very early on that spandex and I do not get along. I don't like showing off my curves. I really struggled during that year. I only did wrestling during my 7th grade year, and I hated every second of it. They used to make us run laps, and I would go to these competitions where I would have to wrestle other students from other schools. And the problem was that they couldn't find anyone in my weight class. I was always one of the largest kids. So it was a struggle to try to find people who were in a comparable weight class for me to wrestle. I remember going to this wrestling meet at a different school, and I had to change in the locker room. And I remember being terrified of changing in front of the other students because even then I was so self-conscious about my body. And the locker room at this school did not have private stalls. So I didn't have anywhere that I could change in private. So I actually found another locker room that was kind of adjacent to the locker room my school was in, and I went in there and I couldn't figure out how to turn on the lights, and I was in there changing and I had just gotten completely undressed, and all of a sudden the lights came on and another school walked in, and I was humiliated, absolutely humiliated, and it traumatized me. And even now I'm so insecure about my body. I won't go without wearing a shirt if I go swimming or to the beach. So after my 7th grade year, I dropped out of wrestling and I continued to put on weight. I can remember in middle school that I would get a piece of cake every day at lunch and eat it with my lunch. And it was a big piece of chocolate cake every day. In my 7th grade year, I was bullied relentlessly by this one particular student and his brother. It almost, in a way, trained me to look for the negativity when I'm around other people. It trained me to look for people making fun of me, to expect it almost. And I recognize now that a lot of my victim mentality stems from that. But in a lot of ways, I have allowed myself to be a victim for all of these years. As I moved into high school, I continued to put on weight. And when I became old enough to drive, it opened me up to a whole new world of fast food. Once I was able to drive and go to these fast food restaurants without anyone there to see me eat, I began eating 2 to 3 meals at a time when I would stop for food. I developed a habit where I would stop and get food on my way to and from any particular occasion. So if my mom asked me to go to the store to pick something up for her, I would stop and get fast food on the way. I would stop and get fast food on the way home, and then I would eat dinner like normal at home with my family. I'm gonna sit here for a second. This is my little resting spot. So I'm gonna sit here for just a moment. So in high school, I weighed around 300 pounds, and as I continued to eat the fast food on a regular basis, my weight just continued to climb.
It was around this time that I discovered a passion for music and for singing. I started a karaoke business at the age of 16, and for the first time I felt like I wasn't being judged by my appearance, but rather for my talent.
During all of this time, I was struggling with my sexuality. I had known since I was a kid that I was gay, but I was trying to hide it and suppress it. I was raised in a very conservative Christian home, and I knew that the church I was raised in was not supportive of that. And I really tried everything I could to be straight. I had a girlfriend when I was in high school for 4 years, and just trying to be somebody who I wasn't. All the while I was stuffing the emotions down with food, trying to suppress who I really was. And I was miserable. I was just absolutely miserable. So at the age of 22, my family and my ex-girlfriend did an intervention on me through the TV show Intervention on A&E. And they sent me to a treatment facility in Florida called Turning Point of Tampa. Turning Point of Tampa is a fantastic treatment program, and they really do a great job. But I don't think that I was in the right mindset at that time, and I viewed it as a diet. I was very focused on the outside appearance and losing weight. But at that time, I did not apply the spiritual and emotional principles that I learned, but I was so focused on my weight. Once I got out of treatment, I lost a massive amount of weight in a very short time. But I was not following my meal plan. I was restricting my food. So I essentially went from one extreme to the other, where I went from overeating, compulsive binging, to restricting and basically anorexia. And I remember at one point I passed out at work. The paramedics came in and they had me hooked up to all these wires. And at that point, the guy was like, "I saw you on TV. How's your family doing?" And I'm sitting there like hooked up to all these wires like, they're fine. It was really awkward. And to be honest, I put a lot of pressure on myself because of being on TV, and I wanted to look good. I was so focused on looking good that I wasn't honest about the struggle. Before I even went to treatment, I had cleaned up my room. I had hoarded all this fast food trash in my room, and I cleaned that all up. And I got my teeth whitened because I thought it would somehow make me look better on camera. But I wasn't authentic with the depths of the struggle that I was in. I still tried to control exactly what I allowed people to see. Like, I was willing to admit I had a problem, but I wasn't willing to show just to what extent that problem went. So after I got out of treatment, I lost all of that weight very quickly. And I was asked to do a follow-up appearance on the Oprah Winfrey Show, which was amazing. It was such a cool experience. But now that I look back on it, that was me active still in my disease. And I was up there talking about how I have hope and how I'm being authentic. And it was just a farce. I was still just trying to look good for TV. In late 2009, I ended up losing my job and I could not find work. I was still living in Florida. I went to a halfway house there. So in 2010, I moved back home to Texas. After having lived on my own for several years, I was back living with my parents, and it was just an uncomfortable situation because I was used to doing things on my own. And so I looked for the fastest way out of it that I could, and I jumped into a relationship with a guy that I met online. Around this time, I had slowly started getting back into the fast food, but it didn't start all at once. It started with me not going to my meetings, my 12-step recovery meetings. I wasn't working with a sponsor, and before long, the food beckoned to me. It was almost like it was calling me. And there was one day where I was just like, I'm just gonna go back and eat at Taco Bell and just have one burrito. And within 6 months of that decision, I gained 100 pounds. And I just remember feeling like such a failure. The relationship that I had gotten into ended, and I was back to being fully immersed in my eating addiction. So within the next couple of years, I ended up gaining all of the weight back. Let's keep walking. So by this point, I was around 25, 26, and I started eventually drinking alcohol and using marijuana. Now, prior to this, I had only identified as a food addict. I had not ever really gotten drunk. I had never tried drugs, so I did not identify as an alcoholic or drug addict. But once I started smoking marijuana, it very quickly progressed to where I was smoking every day. And if you were not aware, with smoking marijuana, there is such a thing called the munchies. Let me tell you, the munchies almost killed me. So it was not long before I was back to 500 pounds. And around that time, I met a guy online, and he was very supportive of me losing weight and getting healthy again. So I began working out every day and losing weight. And before long, I had lost all of the weight again. And for a little while, I was happy. I had stopped smoking marijuana, I had lost the weight, but that's when the alcohol use really picked up. And at this time, I was working as a karaoke host. So I would get free drinks from the bar every day. And my alcoholism progressed also very quickly, to the point where I was getting drunk every night at work and then driving home drunk, sometimes in a blackout. I remember one specific night where I ended up blacking out, and I have no memory of how I got home. I know that I had stopped at a fast food restaurant because I remember waking up in the parking lot and thinking, I need to get home, but I have no memory of driving home. And I passed out in my driveway, and when I came to, it was around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I had vomited all over myself. And that experience scared me enough to where I stopped drinking, but then I turned back to the weed. See, I have this whack-a-mole addiction. It shows itself in multiple ways, and sometimes it'll pop up as alcoholism, sometimes it pops up as drug addiction, sometimes it pops up as binge eating disorder, sometimes it pops up as anorexia. It also pops up with sex and love addiction. So I have to be constantly vigilant about how it tries to portray itself. So by this point, I had stopped drinking, but I was back to smoking weed every day. And of course, with that came the binging every day. So after having lost all of that weight a second time, I started to gain the weight back again. And this time I got up to 610 pounds at my very heaviest. And all of those feelings of guilt and shame came back. And by this point, I was starting to have suicidal thoughts. I was so depressed and miserable that I just didn't want to live anymore. But I was also too scared to commit suicide. Instead, I was committing suicide slowly every day with the food. And last year, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which was around the time that I started this vlog. I initially started the vlog in hopes that it would help keep me accountable, but I was still acting out with the food. It was like I couldn't stop. And that's where, in some of my previous videos, I've talked about powerlessness. That was how it manifested itself. I literally could not stop. I had started to get behind on my bills. I was spending over $35 a day on fast food or food delivery, and I couldn't do it anymore. I was stressed out at work. I just didn't know what to do. All I could think about was how I didn't want to live. And I finally had a breaking point. and I broke down and I reached out for help. And I ended up going back to treatment again. And this time around, I didn't focus on the weight. The weight is a symptom. The food is a symptom. The problem is my thinking. So I've been focused this time on the spiritual and the emotional part of the program and addressing those underlying issues that have caused me to turn to the food to stuff down those feelings. And not every day is easy. You know, they say that one of the benefits of this program is that you learn how to feel again. And one of the downsides of the program is that you learn how to feel again. Sometimes it's difficult, but I'm here to say that it can be done. And if you struggle with food, I promise I understand. And I'm glad you're here. And I'm hoping that by sharing my experience, it can help someone else to realize that you're not alone out there. There is help available. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to all of you who have reached out and showed me your support. I cannot thank you enough. So I hope that sheds some light on my story, where I've been. If you like this video, do me a favor and click that like and subscribe button. With that, I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. I will see you guys next time. Lord willing and the creek don't rise.